Hello students, in the last class we have discussed about tomato and the various products that can be prepared out of tomatoes. In this class we will discuss about mushrooms and their importance, the nutritional aspect of it, and what are the various commercially cultivated mushrooms in India, and why these mushrooms need to be processed and made into different kinds of products. What are the reasons for converting them into different products? And also we'll be knowing various methods by which they can be preserved, and finally what are the different poisonous mushrooms that are available which you need to avoid. Apart from pulses being a very good source of protein for the vegetarian diet, mushrooms also play a key role in providing high quality protein, minerals, folic acid and vitamins in the case of vegetarian diet. As the lack in the case of your protein diet, these mushrooms will provide a substitute food. So in terms of their pleasant flavor, taste, freshness, and even the biting quality what you get in the case of your meat and other non-vegetarian food, so that will be substituted with the help of the mushrooms because they'll be having that meaty biting texture and flavor, so which will replace the non-vegetarian diet in the case of your vegetarian diet. In India there are three species of mushrooms that are being cultivated. As soon as you remember mushroom, you just remember the button mushroom, so which is most widely cultivated species in India, so which occupies around 90% of the total production of the mushrooms. So this species is botanically called as Agaricus bisporus, and there is another species which is called as oyster mushroom or dhingri, which is scientifically called as Pleurotus serger, and there is another mushroom that is paddy straw mushroom, which is Wolveriella wolvesi. So these are the three species of mushrooms that are commercially cultivated in India. Why these mushrooms needs to be processed and made into products such as dried, canned, or frozen, or pickled, or chutneys, soups? The different products and the preservation methods are being followed for the preservation of these mushrooms. So what is the reason? Basically, these mushrooms are highly perishable. So they'll be having a high rate of metabolic activity, and they'll be having a high rate of respiration, and they are susceptible to enzymatic browning, so which causes very quick deterioration of these products. So that means they cannot stand at a room temperature not more than 24 hours. So because as such they will be having high amount of moisture, and they are very delicate in nature, so which are prone to enzymatic browning. So that's the reason why these mushrooms are highly perishable, and they need to be preserved either by drying, canning, freezing, or they can be converted into a canned product, or pickles, chutneys, sauce, or soups. In this slide you can see button mushroom, which is popularly called as white button mushroom and scientifically called as Agaricus bisporus. So this is the most popular mushroom, so which is relished for its taste, freshness, and the meaty texture, and is most popular uh, cultivated mushroom in India. So this occupies 90% of the production in India. In this slide you can see oyster mushroom or dhingri, which is scientifically called as Pleurotus sajorkaju, which is most popular in our college. It is under the cultivation by our ELP students. And this is paddy straw mushroom, which is scientifically called as Wolveriella wolvesi. In this lecture, we will try to understand the process involved in the canning of mushrooms, pickling, preparation of soup, sauce, chutney, and the preparation of dehydrated mushroom in the coming slides. Let's see the first product that is prepared from the mushrooms, that is canning. You are much familiar with the canning of fruits and vegetables. In the case of fruits, the fruits are filled using sugar syrup, while in the case of vegetables, these are filled with brine. Similar to that of your vegetables, the mushrooms here, in the case of canning of mushrooms, are filled with brine, except that everything is similar to that of what you practiced in the case of canning of fruits and vegetables. Here, for the preparation of canned mushrooms, button mushrooms are preferred over oyster mushrooms or paddy straw mushrooms. So these various steps involved in canning of mushrooms include sorting and grading of the mushrooms, followed by thorough washing, blanching them, and filling them into the cans and filling with brine and removing the entrapped air by exhaustion, and then sealing the can, and then processing them, cooling, and labeling and storage. It is just similar to that of what you have practiced in the case of your vegetable canning. The first step of canning of mushrooms include sorting and then followed by grading. First, sort out the unhealthy ones, the mushrooms which are diseased, damaged, bruised, or shriveled ones. So those mushrooms needs to be separated and sorted out. They are not fit for the canning process. Only select the mushrooms which are healthy and which are having a tight cap. So the cap has to be very tight, and the head has to be very tight, and then the cap diameter will decide the grading. So the grading is based on the diameter of the cap. If the diameter of the cap is up to 2.5 centimeters, which is having a compact head, so that is called as grade A mushroom. If the diameter of the cap, or if it is more than 2.5 centimeters, then it is considered to be grade B mushrooms. After selecting healthy and tight buttons, the next step of canning involves washing of these mushrooms. They are thoroughly washed in cold running water 3 to 4 times, so the dirt, debris, everything is removed. And then while washing, the care must be taken they are not excessively rubbed or excessively damaged, because or they are sensitive and soft in nature. They may lose their shape and structure because of excessive rubbing. Healthy, tight button mushrooms, which are thoroughly washed, are subjected to blanching. In the process of blanching, two objectives are being met. One is the removal of air, another one is to prevent enzymatic browning. So if the button mushrooms are subjected to blanching, it will prevent the enzymatic activity, because they are being exposed to very high temperatures for a short period of time, maybe few minutes of 2 to 3 minutes, so which kills the enzymes, or which denatures the enzyme for causing browning reactions. It also helps in removal of the air, entrapped air from the tissues of the raw material, so that while packing it will be uniform. So to meet these two objectives of prevention of browning as well as removal of the air, this blanching process is carried out. So this blanching can be carried out either by way of putting in hot water or by steam blanching. The steam blanching is preferred over the water blanching because it reduces the loss of nutrients. The steam blanching is preferred as the losses in water blanching are more. So almost like 30% of losses are observed in the case of water blanching. So immediately when the mushrooms are kept in hot water or exposed to steam blanching for a period of 2 to 3 minutes, then they are dipped in cold water. After sorting, grading, washing, and blanching of the mushrooms, next step is filling of the cans. The mushrooms are filled into the cans which are sulfur resistant. The cans must be sulfur resistant so that it can prevent the staining of the canned mushrooms, sulfur staining of the canned mushrooms. To prevent that one, these mushrooms are filled into a special cans which are lacquered cans. So these are coated with a lacquer which will prevent sulfur staining of the mushrooms. And these mushrooms are filled into the cans having a weight of around 230 grams in A1 cans and 430 grams in A2 and half size cans. So the name of the can is after the size of the and capacity of the can. So if it is a can which is having a capacity of 230 grams, that means it is called as a A1 can. If it is having a capacity of 430 grams, it is called as A2 and half can. After filling the sulfur-resistant cans with the mushrooms, the next step is brining. So brining is nothing but salt solution of 2%, that is 2% common salt, 1% sugar and 0.05% citric acid is added into this solution, which is called as a brine, so which will improve the flavor and it will improves the efficiency of heat transfer. So this is the brine solution which has to be filled up to the brim of the can. So this will help, the brining will help in not only improving the flavor of the mushrooms but also improves the transfer of heat. If the mushrooms are not filled with this any kind of liquid medium, in the case of fruits and vegetables, fruits it is syrup. In the case of vegetables and mushrooms, you fill the interspaces with a brine or salt solution. So this will effectively carry the heat that is being given to the can to the mushrooms so that so they get heated up. So there's an efficiency, so which improves or reduces the processing time either and also helps in increasing the shelf life of the canned mushrooms. So this is the importance of having a brine for improving the flavor and also for reducing the processing time, for efficient transfer of heat and also increasing the shelf life of the canned mushrooms. After filling the cans with mushrooms and brine, the next step is to remove the entrapped air in the mushrooms. Either in the brine, there will be entrapped air while pouring this brine into the cans. To remove that entrapped air, exhaustion is carried out by using either exhaust box or allowing these cans to pass through boiling water. So till the temperature of the center of the can reaches a temperature of 85 to 90 degrees Celsius for 1 to 2 minutes. So this is specific for the boiling water. And the exhaust box, so these cans which are partially clinched or open cans, they are allowed to pass through this exhaust tunnel and then there will be removal of entrapped air, and this length of this timing is depending upon the size of the can and even the length of this tunnel, so which will decide the exhaustion time. So this will help in removing the entrapped and occluded gases for longer shelf life. After filling the cans with mushrooms and brine followed by exhaustion, the next step is hermetical sealing of the cans. So this is done by a double seamer which will seal hermetical seal, and then these cans are placed upside down so that the lids are sterilized. Because of the heat of the contents, because of the heat of the brine present inside the can, it will sterilize the lid of the cans by placing them upside down. These hermetically sealed cans are processed at a pressure of 15 lbs and processed for a duration of 30 minutes in case of if it is a A1 can, or if it is an A2 and half size can, it takes around 45 minutes for the processing to complete. After hermetic sealing and then processing of the cans, the next step is to get rid of the adverse activities of the microbes. So the adverse activities of the microbes can be removed by exposing them. The hot cans are placed in cold water, cold running water, so that the microbes get denatured, the microbes get killed, and their activities are abruptly stopped because of the abrupt shock to the temperature fluctuations from a very hot temperature to a very cold temperature. So that will cause to get rid of their adverse activities upon the mushrooms. After cooling of these cans, then they are placed in a cool and dry place and they are smeared with grease So this grease will help in the removal of the moisture. If this moisture is removed, so this will prevent any kind of rusting. So to prevent rusting, they smear with grease. So then after taking precautions to prevent the rusting, then these cans are kept for observation for a period of 8 to 10 days so that any kind of swell, leakage, puffing and other disorders can be observed so before final labeling. So once it is found that these cans are good for or fit for consumption and fit for sale, then they are properly labeled after meeting the statutory requirements of the food laws. So then they are sold. For preservation of mushrooms as pickle, the recipe is as follows. So for 1 kg of mushrooms, you need 100 grams of salt, 10 grams of red chili powder, 10 grams of turmeric powder, 10 grams of coriander powder, 5 grams each of aniseed and cumin powder, and 2 grams each of various spices like your fenugreek, black pepper, cinnamon powder, and 20 grams of chopped garlic or garlic paste, and 100 grams of onion which is chopped, 80 to 100 ml of vinegar, and 200 grams of mustard oil for preparing mustard pickle in oil. Let's see how we prepare mushroom pickle in oil. First we need to wash and cut the mushrooms which are freshly harvested healthy mushrooms into pieces, and these mushrooms need to be blanched by putting them in a muslin cloth and dipping them in hot water for about 3 to 4 minutes and immediately cooling them by dipping them in cold water so that browning reactions can be prevented or enzymes can be denatured. Then the excess moisture can be removed by spreading them on a muslin cloth so that the excess moisture can be drained off or can be dried. And then heat the oil, fry onions, garlic and ginger in it, and then mix all other ingredients and finally the mushrooms, and then mix it thoroughly, then followed by adding vinegar and then pack it in a clean jar. This is how a mushroom pickle is prepared. For preparation of mushroom soup, this is the recipe. For 1 kg of mushrooms, we need 30 grams of salt, 5 grams each of red chili powder, cardamom, fenugreek, black pepper, and cinnamon powder, and 100 grams of butter, 12 grams of maida, 20 to 30 ml of vinegar, and 200 ml of milk for preparing this mushroom soup. For preparation of mushroom soup, we need to thoroughly wash the mushrooms in water and then make a slurry of it. For preparation of slurry, we need to put them in a blender wherein this fibrous portion can be removed and then fine slurry can be prepared by passing through the blended mixture through the aluminum or plastic sieve so that we can get a fine slurry, and this slurry is fried on a melted butter. So melted after melting the butter on a pan, this slurry has to be added to that and it is cooked or fried to such an extent till it becomes brown, and then after it's becoming just brown, then add wheat flour, spices and milk to that mixture and then boil it continuously so that you will get a reasonable consistency. So then that is the point at which the mushroom soup is done. Then once it is done, fill it into hot when it is hot only into the cans and then process at a 15 lbs pressure for 30 minutes and 45 minutes for A1 and A2 end of cans. This is the recipe for preparation of mushroom sauce. For 1 kg of mushrooms, we need 20 grams of salt, 10 grams of red chili powder, 5 grams of cardamom powder, 5 grams of dry ginger powder, 2 grams of garlic paste, 4 grams of mace, and 100 ml of vinegar. For preparation of mushroom sauce, we need to prepare a fine slurry of the mushrooms. But these mushrooms, unlike in the case of your mushroom soup, wherein you prepare a slurry by removing the fibrous aspect of it, in the case of your mushroom sauce, what exactly you do is you soak the mushrooms in vinegar or by sprinkling with salt. Either you soak them with vinegar for 12 hours or sprinkle with salt on these mushrooms and keep it for 12 hours in a container. Either it is enamel container or it is a porcelain container, a can which is enameled, or a porcelain container, so that it will be soaked in vinegar or it will be sprinkled with salt, so that it will be ready for blending to prepare a fine slurry of the mushrooms. Salted or soaked mushrooms, either by salt or by dipping them in vinegar or blended into a fine slurry. To this slurry, vinegar and spices are added, and then this entire mass is cooked till it becomes a consistency which is similar to that of a sauce. Then this sauce, when it is still hot, is poured into the sauce bottles and sealed with crown corks. And this sauce, which is sealed with crown corks, is sterilized for 30 minutes at 82 to 85 degrees Celsius and stored in cool and dry place. This is the recipe for preparation of mushroom chutney. For 1 kg of mushrooms, you need 250 grams of sugar, 100 grams of salt, 5 grams of red chili powder, 75 grams of chopped ginger, 5 grams of each of aniseed and cumin powder, 2 grams of each of spices like fenugreek, black pepper, cinnamon powder, and 25 grams of chopped garlic or paste, 100 grams of chopped onion, 10 to 15 ml of vinegar, 100 grams of mustard oil. For preparation of mushroom chutney, the mushrooms needs to be thoroughly washed and cut into small pieces and cook them in a pressure cooker for 15 to 20 minutes. Amount of water that has to be used is for every kg of mushrooms you need to use 100 to 150 ml of water, and you need to cook them in a pressure cooker for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then meanwhile you need to chop the onions and then garlic, ginger, and fry them on oil and mix with the mushrooms that are cooked in the pressure cooker. And this entire mixture has to be thoroughly cooked till it becomes thickened. So it takes around 30 to 45 minutes. While the mass is about to thicken, so which usually take 30 to 45 minutes, you need to add the spices and cook for 2 to 3 minutes, and then add sodium benzoate, which is a preservative which has to be dissolved in little amount of water, and then it should be added to the chutney. And along with that, add acetic acid, that is vinegar, and then you'll be getting your final TSS of around 55 to 58 degree Brix. And this particular chutney has to be packed in a clean glass container when it is still hot. For preparation of dehydrated mushrooms, you need for every 10 kg of mushrooms 150 grams of potassium metabisulfate, 20 grams of citric acid. Next product prepared out of mushrooms is dehydrated mushrooms. The main problem in the case of dehydration of mushrooms is browning. So when these mushrooms, when they are exposed to atmospheric air, so as you know, there will be a browning which is as a result of various enzymes. So this has to be prevented by by dipping them in hot water, by blanching, or by treating with salt, or by treating with potassium metabisulfate, which will help in the prevention of browning reactions. So our aim is in the preparation of dehydrated mushrooms. So what you do is you take up series of process which involve various chemicals like your KMS or salt or blanching techniques which will prevent these enzymes which are causing browning reaction. And then later what you're going to do is you're going to dry them so that you will get dehydrated mushrooms, so which are not browned. So when you dehydrate the mushrooms without following these particular pre-treatments, eventually whatever the mushrooms you are going to get, they'll be brown or they'll be turning into a dark color as a result of browning reactions. Once you treat them with these pre-treatments, then you will be getting a mushroom which are similar to that of as fresh as they are harvested. The detailed steps involved in the dehydration of mushrooms include selection of healthy white button mushrooms and thorough washing them by repeated washing with the cold water, and then followed by salt and 0.1% potassium metabisulfate, and then later followed by these mushrooms are cut into two equal halves longitudinally, and then they are washed quickly again with a running cold water. So once this thorough washing is done, they need to be soaked in 2% salt water to prevent any kind of browning. So as you all know, this salt water will prevent the entry of oxygen, so thereby there will be any oxidation and the browning reactions will be prevented. After the cut mushrooms are placed in salt water to prevent browning, and then they are immediately blanched in hot boiling water for 4 to 5 minutes, followed by immediate cooling, and then subjected to steeping in 1.5% potassium metabisulfate and 0.2% citric acid for a period of 30 to 45 minutes. And then the moisture and the water, so whatever is there, it is completely removed and it is drained, and then they are further washed thoroughly to wash off the chemicals that are used for the pre-treatment, like your KMS or citric acid. And then these are dried by placing them in a dehydrator at a temperature of 60 degrees Celsius for 6 to 8 hours. And then once they are dried completely, then they are packed in the polythene bags, and then they are stored. We have discussed about edible mushrooms which are commercially cultivated, that include white button mushroom, oyster mushroom, and Paris straw mushroom. Apart from these mushrooms, there are other mushrooms which are poisonous, which are scientifically called as Amanita phalloides, commonly known as death cap, Amanita virosa, commonly called as destroying angel. These mushrooms contain 1 milligram of fatal dose of poison per kg body weight. If these mushrooms are subjected to drying, and 1 gram of these dried mushrooms contain about 2 milligrams of poison. So that's the reason why, so when these fresh mushrooms are used for dehydration, care must be taken that these poisonous mushrooms, your death cap and destroying angel, should not be mixed or contaminated with the edible mushrooms. To prevent contamination of edible mushrooms like your button mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, or paddy-straw mushrooms, we must be able to recognize the poisonous mushrooms like your death cap Amanita phalloides, which is present on the left side of the slide. On the right side, you can see destroying angel, which is scientifically known as Amanita virosa. So we should be able to recognize and identify these mushrooms, so while processing the edible mushrooms to produce a quality produce.